Good evening, I'm Chris Henson. Katerina is away. Here's what's making news right now.
That was so heartfelt, the whole ceremony from when we got here and arrived.
Making more bike-friendly place for the women and looking for where's the barriers and remove them.
I know people are worried about it because they're thinking they're going to be forced here or forced there, forced out of district.
We begin by marking the past, an afternoon of reflection, memorials on Windsor's riverfront to commemorate the hundreds of lives lost in the Dieppe Raid during the Second World War. More than 900 Canadians died during the raid, including a large portion of the Essex and Kent Scottish regiment. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa attended today's event. She joins us now live. Jen, we watched that online. We were seeing people in person who were experiencing that. What was it like for you today?
Chris, today was a very reflective time for many of the people that came here to Windsor's riverfront in Dieppe Gardens, and that's especially true for 100-year-old John L. Date. He was born in Sarnia, and he's one of the last surviving members of the Dieppe Raid. He came here today to take in the ceremony with his daughters and also to lay a wreath.
During the ceremony, are you thinking about those that have gone on before you?
Oh yeah, sure. Good friends.
Date was one of thousands of Canadian troops who took part in the Dieppe Raid. He was one of few who survived the battle and remains alive today. Date's daughter says he never really shared much with the family about the war. Only recently has she learned more about what he went through.
It is heartfelt, and everybody put so much into this.
More than 100 people came out to Windsor's riverfront to remember those who died and honor people like Date. They gathered around Red Beach Monument, which has stones from Dieppe Beach.
They were the stones that were washed in the blood of young men who, when the gates of their landing craft opened, were cut down by a withering fire of steel and lead. They are the stones that bear the scuff marks of war boots, young men scrambling frantically to find some safe place on a beach where there was none.
Among those in attendance were Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens and local MPs. The event wrapped up here with everyone observing 2 minutes of silence and historic aircraft flying overhead. And it's worth noting as well, Chris, that here the event in Windsor today was the official Canadian event to remember those troops who went to Dieppe 80 years ago. The biggest message and takeaway was one of gratitude for those who went to the war and gave their lives. Chris.
Thanks, Jennifer. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa live tonight. It's a key day in the municipal election campaign. The deadline for candidates to submit the paperwork passed this afternoon. The CBC's Kiri Breen has been looking into who's running, what's happening as these nominations close. How's the race looking here?
Well, Chris, in Windsor, there's more than 50 candidates running for the 10 ward positions and mayor, not including school board trustees. And this election has a lot of familiar faces. All but one councillor are running again. But there are some hot races shaping up. Starting with Ward 3, that's the downtown core. Current councillor Reno Bordelin is not running, and there are 9 people trying to fill the spot. Some names you might recognize are downtown Windsor BIA Chair Brian Yeomans and business owner Ronaldo Agostino. Now in Ward 4, that's the Walkerville area, candidates have flocked to this ward as well. Sitting councillor Chris Holt is running for mayor instead, looking to pose a challenge to Drew Dilkens, and that's resulted in 8 contenders coming forward. They include a few well-known Windsorites like former radio host Mark McKenzie and a former Chamber of Commerce CEO, Matt Marchand. Marchand, you'll remember, ran against Dilkens in the last election. And right now there are also 7 people running for mayor. And I should mention that the candidates list that we have is the latest. However, it's not clear whether it's final. The city's election manager told CBC that it's going to be a busy day, but as long as the candidates were in the building by the 2 p.m. deadline, their papers will be processed. So it's possible we could see additional candidates or even people who didn't get the signatures and complete the process.
What else stands out for you from what we know so far about who's running in these races here?
Yes, in Ward 8, there's going to be a bit of a rematch of the provincial election. Councillor Gary Kashek was close to being acclaimed until Gemma Gray-Hall stepped forward as a candidate yesterday. Now, they faced off in the spring provincial election in Windsor-Tecumseh, a seat won by Andrew Dowie. And the pair were also competitors in the 2018 municipal vote. We also have a candidate looking to make a council comeback. Paul Borelli lost Ward 10 to Jim Morrison in the 2018 vote. The margin there was just 250 votes.
Those are some interesting races to follow. What about out in the county? What are we looking at there as far as the candidates so far?
Right, well, Windsor's election has had a lot of incumbents, other familiar faces. The county is a different story. No matter how the vote shakes out, we're going to get three new mayors rather. That's because the mayors of Amherstburg, LaSalle, and Kingsville won't be on the ballot.
In the town of Essex during the last election, there were allegations of voter fraud. That led to the resignation of Mayor Larry Snively. What's happening with the mayor's seat out there now?
Right, Chris, we're also keeping an eye on Essex. Richard Meloche, appointed mayor following Snively's resignation, is looking to hold on to the position, and he's facing a challenge from Councillor Sherry Bondi. And since the 2018 vote, there's also been some reform around election policies in Essex. That includes changes surrounding the use of proxy votes, which was the key issue in the Snively case. So, Chris, lots to look out for, and I'll be doing just that as we inch closer to Election Day. Chris?
Thanks for this primary here. I really appreciate it. As CBC's Kerry Breen giving us the update there. We have a web story up as well. You can find the most up-to-date information on who is running on our website. That's where you're going to find all of the details throughout this election campaign, what they're promising to you, the voters, as you go and fill out that ballot. Just go to cbc.ca/Windsor. Premier Ford is heading to Atlantic Canada this weekend to meet with other premiers about the current strains on the healthcare system. This comes after Ontario's health minister released a 5-point plan to deal with hospitals under pressure, including a plan to transfer patients out of hospital and into temporary long-term care homes. It's something that advocates are calling a violation of patient rights. Lorenda Redekop has the latest.
Reiner Petke worries about his mom and what the Ford government's plans could mean.
That just made my heart sink. Because my mom's 95 years old.
She lives at home where he's her caregiver. She's already on waiting lists for long-term care. He can't imagine if she ends up hours away.
Sooner or later, there's going to be a fall. This is what happens, and inevitably they wind up in the hospital. And that's the only way they ever get onto the priority list to get in long-term care.
One expert can't believe the government's proposal.
Honestly, I'm horrified because it fundamentally is stripping the human rights of people to actually make a choice about where they want to live. You know, the only people in our society that we don't give a choice about where they want to live are convicted criminals.
This is all as hospitals are overwhelmed, struggling with a lack of staff. The government says hundreds of people have been in hospital for 6 months waiting for a long-term care bed. It plans to move 1,300 people by next March. The bill, introduced by the government, says certain actions may be carried out without consent, though yesterday the minister introduced it this way.
What the bill does not do is forcibly move patients out of alternative level of cares. What the bill does not do is force people into homes at a great, massive distance away from their families.
It doesn't specify what distances are allowed. It does say a patient cannot be physically restrained to be transferred to a home.
But you just saying, I don't want to go, no, we can still push you along unless you start physically restraining. Like, this is absolutely draconian, and this really takes away the essential right to people to absolutely live in their own homes.
He says often the homes that have space are older homes or ones that suffered the worst outbreaks and most deaths during the pandemic.
And I know many lawyers have already, are looking at this and are absolutely horrified at this, breach of, fundamental justice and fundamental rights of people.
Dr. Sinha hopes to talk with the government and suggest amendments, such as requiring people to have up to 5 long-term care home choices and not allow just one. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Windsor Regional Hospital says that these changes should help open hospital beds, something that could help ease wait times at the emergency department. Yesterday, we heard that there's 31 people in acute care that could go to a long-term care home. There's 19 people being treated on stretchers in the emergency department here in Windsor Regional. who need an acute care bed. The hospital hopes that these changes help people move through the healthcare system. I spoke with Paul Britton today. His dad is one of the 31 at Windsor Regional Hospital waiting for their preferred long-term care home to open up. He wants to go to the same home as his wife in Oshawa. Britton explained to me how he sees these changes working and looked at what they were in place before. This is what he told me. Can you explain how this impacts your dad, who's at Windsor Regional?
Well, in our case, it actually benefits us. I know people are worried about it because they're thinking they're going to be forced here or forced there, forced out of district. My father's looking for a home out of district, so it may actually be beneficial to us. He's on the list for a home, but he only chose one, which is where my mother is, trying to get back with her. And the situation is, if he chooses more than one and he goes to, say, number 5 on his list, he loses his crisis level. So he goes to the bottom of the list to get to his number 1 choice, where my mother is.
How do you feel these changes, what effect will it have on your family?
For us, I think it'll benefit us, just because my dad's goal is to go back to Oshawa. Yeah, he's from Oshawa. I brought him out here to help him out, to keep him out of a home as long as possible. And when he went south here, I was not under the impression, but I was thinking that, okay, once he's here and if he gets admitted to alternate level of care, he'd be able to go back to his hometown, Oshawa. Well, Oshawa said no, he's a non-resident, so he's not allowed to come back. He's got to stay in Windsor till his permanent home opens up, which is the situation we're in now, where he's in hospital in Windsor. So this new legislation in that sense will help us that he may be able to get transferred there. I know some people are concerned that, they think patients are losing rights, and that may be a valid point, that, if you're in Windsor and your family lives in Windsor and you're getting moved out to Tilbury or something into a home, yeah, it's not ideal. So it's not going to be ideal in all situations, but in our case, it certainly works. And, we're looking forward to it. And again, that your classification, my dad's considered a crisis. So with that, you're supposed to pick 5 homes that you on a list, and your number 1 being your first choice, number 5 being your 5th choice, obviously. So unfortunately, with that current legislation, is if you go to the 5th home and that's the first one available, that's where you would go, and you would lose your crisis destination or status at that point. So you would just go to the bottom of the list, basically, and it could be, who knows, 5-6 years, depending on what home you're trying to get in, right? And I know with my dad in our situation, he wants to get back to Oshawa. He doesn't want to die in Windsor, right? And he wants to be near my mom. So with this new legislation, where you won't lose your crisis status if you go to the 5th choice per se. So we're hoping that's going to come in, because we only chose one home based on that reason. So we're hoping as soon as this passes, which apparently maybe September 1st, the minister's saying, we're going to add to that list right away homes in Oshawa, just to get him there, knowing he won't lose his crisis status.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has nominated an Indigenous woman to the Supreme Court of Canada. Her name is Michelle O'Bonswin. For more, here's the CBC's Peter Cowan.
Well, this is going to be the first time in the 147-year history of the Supreme Court that an Indigenous person will be on the bench. Michelle O'Bonswin is Abenaki. She grew up in a small Franco-Ontarian town just outside of Sudbury. And it's that French-speaking background that is key, because that's one of the requirements in order to sit on the court, a requirement that has been criticized. In her application to the Supreme Court, she highlighted her work on mental health, saying that the justice system has an important role to reduce the stigma of mental health. Her appointment is getting support from people like Murray Sinclair, former senator, as well as chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He wrote in a statement this afternoon, Justice O'Bonswin has shown clearly that she will fill an important role in Canada's highest court. It is long past due that the court has a seat for an Indigenous justice, one who has seen firsthand the impact of colonialism on Indigenous communities. There was also a statement this afternoon from the Congress of Aboriginal People, which wrote, Indigenous people have long faced discrimination, racism, and prejudice in Canada's justice system, leading to the overrepresentation of our people in courts and prisons. Governments must continue to ensure Indigenous voices help create laws, interpret, and enforce them. This is the second landmark appointment to the Supreme Court in as many years. Last year, Mahmoud Jamal became the first person of color to sit on the Supreme Court. Peter Cowan, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Minister of Transport testified before a House of Commons committee today about airport delays and flight cancellations. An opposition member asked him why the government is sticking with the ArriveCan app, saying it's adding to delays at customs.
ArriveCan is not contributing to the congestion. In fact, ArriveCan is a useful tool that helps verify the vaccination status of an individual before arriving at our borders. If we didn't have ArriveCan, the processing of arrivals would take longer time because it would have to be done manually.
Critics have been slamming the government, telling them to make ArriveCan use voluntary when current border measures expire at the end of September. To the United States now, where a Michigan judge has blocked attempts to prosecute abortions in the state. This comes after the fall of Roe v. Wade, which meant that a 1931 law banning an abortion in Michigan could be enforced. But today, a judge granted an injunction preventing that, saying that it would cause harm to the bodies of women, people capable of pregnancy. The decision means abortion is expected to remain legal in Michigan until the fall. That's when voters could ultimately have a huge say on the matter. A new program is helping new Canadian women learn how to bike. It's called Young Women in Motion, Breaking Barriers with Bikes. Many of the participants had never been on a bike before taking part in the program. This week, the group shared their ideas with the public on how to create a more bike-friendly city.
Thank you so much for you are doing to help us enjoy independence, mobility, and freedom of bikes. I think for making more bike-friendly place for the women and looking for where is the barriers and remove them. It's great programs that we have, and actually we did it. So now we had the municipal's answer and response that it shows the program is effective and they will have a response and they will do something in action to make Windsor more bike-friendly.
This program was a chance to break my barriers as a woman to drive a bike and learn how to drive a bike, because it was my first time to drive a bike here in Windsor and to drive it safely on the road.
Living in a small village does not give us the access to ride bikes on the road. So probably that's why was the reason that I did not learn how to ride a bike. But it was a great opportunity to learn how to ride a bike and break that barrier here. We were given the choice to raise our voice so that we will there would be some changes done for the roads about biking and cycling. Since a lot of people who don't know how to ride a bike, like me, learned how to ride a bike. So it was scary to ride a bike safely on the road. So with them fixing the roads, that would be very helpful to know that we're safe on the road to bike.
You saw that shot there going down University. I do not say that was at speed. I do believe that was a time lapse. Just want to make sure, because you're going that fast on that road on a bike. I do not know how your teeth stay together from all the chittering and chattering. A live look outside, we see a boat going underneath the Ambassador Bridge. Beautiful little sparkles on the water. A sunny Friday. Is it going to be nice all weekend? Dahlia's going to tell us. That's next. Dahlia Ashley joins us for a live look at the weather now. You were warning us about rain starting next week, this whole week. We got a good weekend still shaping up though, at least?
That's right, Chris. I mean, I hope you got to enjoy some of that sunshine today. A little bit of brightness in your way over the next few days, but then those damp conditions start to kick in again, and that humidity is sticking around, which gives us that mugginess that some of us don't like. The normal high usually this time of year is 26 degrees. Windsor is sitting well above that, 29, and the normal low is pretty much averaging as the same temperature. The current temperature right now in Windsor, 28 degrees. The cool spot in the region is London, and that's because there's some thunderstorms and some rain around there. And then with the humidity that we're talking about, it's cranking up that heat a little bit. And like I said, that mugginess that we were talking about earlier, making it feel more like 33 degrees in Windsor, and in London, 31. Now, are we expecting any rain overnight? And the answer to that is no. It's more so tomorrow that we're going to see a little bit of scattered showers here, as we can see right there. It's more so heavy activity of rainfall south of the border. And then we start to see that making its way into Windsor around 6 o'clock tomorrow. Starts to clear up overnight, and then it pays us a visit again on Sunday. So just something to look out for. There's going to be scattered showers again on Sunday evening. So really damp conditions over the next few days. And then tonight, temperatures will drop, giving us a cooler evening in in Windsor, 18 degrees, Leamington 18, Sarnia 16 degrees. And then, like I said, Sunday and Monday, that's when we get to see that rainfall. So if you're heading into work on Monday, bring your umbrellas with you. Same thing on Sunday. And then tomorrow, we get a little bit of a break, 40% chance of rain. It's more so Sunday and Monday, especially Sunday, 70% chance of rain and a risk of a thunderstorm. And then a nice break again on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Sounds good, Dahlia. Thanks for this.
Thanks, Chris.
Enjoy that weekend. And if you are trying to enjoy your weekend and it is Friday, and for some that might mean a liquid beverage, we bring you to New Jersey next, where, well, you know, something to bark about to tell your friends later. That's after the break. In international news, United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres visited the port city of Odessa today to see the progress that's been made on Ukrainian grain exports.
It's very emotional for me to be here today in Odessa and to see, I just saw wheat being loaded into a ship again.
Under a safe passage deal brokered by the UN and Turkey, more than 24 ships have set sail from ports in and around Odessa. They're carrying more than 500,000 tons of grain and other agricultural products. Guterres says he's been expressing concerns about the potential for disaster at Europe's biggest nuclear plant. It's been in Russian hands since March, and the area around it has seen fierce fighting in recent weeks. Prime Minister Trudeau says his meetings with the German Chancellor next week will be about more than Germany's immediate energy needs. Trudeau says it's a chance to position Canada as a significant energy supplier in the next few decades. In particular, Trudeau pointed to hydrogen.
We know hydrogen is a long way off for many uses, but there are uses currently for hydrogen. There are sources of developing hydrogen, of producing hydrogen in Canada that we know are going to be more and more important in the coming years for jobs, for economic growth, for innovation, and for energy requirements around the world.
The Prime Minister visited Quebec's Magdalen Islands today in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. He announced an investment of about $40 million to reconstruct a wharf that's an important gateway for transportation, fishing, and the tourist industry. Meanwhile, Health Canada authorizing a booster dose of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for children between 5 and 11 years old.
This booster dose provides a great option to restore protection for this age group, especially for those who are at high risk of severe illness.
Now, Tam says children should receive the booster at least 6 months after receiving their initial 2 doses. If you're looking for that hair of the dog hangover cure and decided to head to a certain bar in New Jersey, you may find a lot of that and much more. It is Yappy Hour at Wonder Bar in Asbury Park. And yes, these patrons on all fours because they appear to be drunk with joy. 3 days a week, dogs are allowed to be off leash in the afternoon. They play while their owners grab a drink. But like most good watering holes, that aggressive behavior frowned upon at the outdoor bar. The doggy bouncers are around to ensure that all those furry friends have a good time. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Before we go, we want to leave you with one more look at the memorial from earlier today. In honor of those who served, in memory of those who died in Dieppe, France 80 years ago. For more news, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks for watching.